Attempts to tweak auto insurance legislation stall out in Lansing. This morning, State Senators Stephanie Chang and Aric Nesbitt on whether no-fault reform needs more reform or not, and taking steps to slow down surging inflation. But is it enough to end the nonstop sticker shock? We'll talk to the experts. Today is Sunday, March 20th, 2022. This is Flashpoint. Hello and welcome to Flashpoint, everybody. I'm Jason Colthorpe. Devin is off this week. Auto insurance reform. 3 words that came to fruition in 2019, and it's gotten rave reviews from those now paying thousands less for their car insurance, and so many drivers about to get those $400 checks from their insurance companies. But there's a flip side to that coin. The people who suffered catastrophic injuries in accidents and once had every necessary expense taken care of are now finding themselves with no one to care for them, as many are dropped by providers, and many of those healthcare workers also finding themselves out of a job. This past week, Michigan's House Speaker said the discussion is over, for this term anyway. We'll talk to 2 lawmakers squarely on opposite sides of this issue to see if there is a middle ground. We're also going to tackle inflation, why it'll probably take more than this week's interest rate hike to take some of the air out of the high costs. And is there any way to accomplish that without risking a recession? Yep, we're solving the world's problems today. Let's get started with Flashpoint. Let's welcome State Senator Stephanie Chang to the show. She's a Democrat from Detroit, and State Senator Aric Nesbitt, a Republican from Lawton. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Senator Nesbitt, let me start with you, since you authored the bill that was passed in 2019 to overhaul the reform of the auto insurance system. Proponents would say it's finally saving Michiganders on their auto insurance, and critics are saying it's exactly what insurance companies wanted. A lot of people are losing their coverage that need it. Do you think it's working as it was intended to?
Yeah, the goal all along was to provide more competition in the marketplace, lower the costs for drivers, seniors, and families here in Michigan. We've seen that cost go down here in the state, limit the lawsuits, and stop the price gouging of auto accident victims here in the state of Michigan. And so this is something where we've seen new companies have come in to sell insurance, and we've seen nearly 100,000 new drivers that hadn't had insurance before actually pick up insurance, because now we have choice in the system and there's real savings in the system.
The people who've been in serious accidents who are losing what they had before, I know you've heard from some of them. What do you say to them, especially to the ones who feel like they were lied to through all of this, and they just feel like they've been left alone in this?
Yeah, they still have unlimited lifetime benefits under the system. They were grandfathered in. And this is something where I asked the Department of Insurance and Financial Services Director last week in my insurance subcommittee meeting, and she said that there has been about 131 complaints, and they have resolved 103 of those. And so I'm looking forward that at least 20, these other 28, they can move forward. Anytime you do a major reform of a 50-year-old law that had a one-size-fits-all government mandate, there are going to be some things where you're probably going to have to look back and do some tweaks, but I think it's something where we should need to let this play out. We need to work and make sure that people have the benefits they need. And if somebody's having issues, I'd encourage them to call the Department of Insurance and Financial Services. It's toll-free, 1-833-ASK-DIFS.
Yeah. Senator Chang, you introduced, along with 2 other lawmakers, a bill to help restore some of those benefits to accident victims. Making changes now like that, wouldn't the obvious effect cause people's auto insurance rates to shoot right back up?
So I guess there's a couple things that I want to point out here. And first of all, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. One is that certainly some people's rates have gone down. Others have really not gone down. I talked to people in my district here in Detroit where some people's rates have gone up. Other people have only seen a slight reduction. So there's much more that we need to do. I believe that there's a lot that we can do to fix the law that is currently in place. But I think what's really important here is that we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about people that I've interacted with in my own district, but also at the Capitol, at numerous events, who, rely on around-the-clock care in order to live and to have the quality of life that they deserve. And unfortunately, far too many of them are losing care, and we really need to do what we can to fix the law. So I'm really proud to, work alongside others, and it's actually a bipartisan effort in both the Senate and the House to really try to bring about some additional changes that are needed to make sure that we are using medical standards when we're talking about deciding whether or not someone can get covered for their care, and lifting the cap on attendant care. Again, some people need around-the-clock care, and that's what they need, and that's what they deserve.
Is there a middle ground on this? Obviously, the Speaker of the House doesn't want to touch it right now and announced that this week. But Senator Chang, do you feel like there is specifically what can be found here that could be agreed upon with both sides to make some changes that you think are necessary?
One of the things that I think is really interesting about this issue is that there's bipartisan support for change, and that so many of us have been hearing from residents in our district. So I actually do believe that if some of these initiatives were to be put on the board, you would actually see significant support. We don't necessarily know exactly what all the numbers would look like, but I think that there's a lot of support for the fact that we need to be able to take care of people in their greatest time of need. Obviously, when it comes down to the details of the number of hours or what types of care or what the fee schedule should look like, I think that there's a lot of differences of opinion there. But I do hope that there can be continued broad bipartisan support for making some additional changes.
Senator Nesbitt, I could correct me. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels like you don't think there needs to be a middle ground here. But if there is anything, do you feel like this is going to go anywhere? That there could be more negotiations, and that the reform could end up being reformed a little bit?
Well, you look at the system, the law that was passed, and the reforms are working. They're driving down the cost of auto insurance. We've went from the $220 MCCA charge every year per car down to $86. People are seeing the $400 refund that the governor's parroting over the last in the coming weeks, and you're seeing that real savings being delivered back to drivers. But we don't want to go back to the wild west that was where they were able to charge whatever they wanted on healthcare, which drove up prices on our auto insurance. And you saw that with, for example, Mayor Duggan took a real big lead a few years ago on seeing these reforms through. And I remember him pointing out that under Medicare, MRI would cost about $400. That's what our seniors are charged under Medicare. And yet auto accident victims were seeing charges up to $3,500 to $4,000. And in this legislation that we passed, we said, okay, limit the charges to 200% of Medicare, twice of what our seniors are being taken care of for. And so that's something that, as you look at it, let's make sure as we look at any of these, that we have predictability into the prices, and we also keep the cost down so that more people can afford insurance, and that we provide choice to the driving public that's out there.
Let me pivot real quick and quickly get your take on the inflation that's just kind of swamping people. I was speaking to seniors earlier this week about gas prices specifically, and I spoke to a woman who said, I'm a Democrat, but I like that Republicans have passed this bill to suspend the state gas tax. She said, but I'm disappointed it might get vetoed by the governor. Senator Chang, do you think that will make a difference for the people that are hurting right now, paying all this extra money with inflation costs?
Well, first, I think it's really important to highlight that, yes, of course, people are struggling. Gas has been extremely expensive. There is no denying that people are struggling with high gas prices. And so we need solutions that are going to work, that will save people real money, but that also don't, blow a giant hole in our transportation budget. Because we also know that in addition to high gas prices, people are also seeing potholes everywhere they go, and they're seeing bridge projects that need to get done, roads that need to get repaired. And so I believe that what we need is a responsible solution. And so that's why Senate Democrats have proposed instead looking at a holiday on the sales tax on gas on top of a pause on the federal gas tax. So, and ultimately that is a solution that would actually save people more money at the pump, while also preserving the money that we need to fix our roads and bridges.
Senator Nesbitt, I'll give you the final word on this. Do you think that's real savings for Michiganders if it's just a couple of bucks every fill up?
Hey, the state government has nearly $13 billion of extra money on the books between federal dollars and government, state to taxpayer dollars. And I think if we can provide relief to consumers, for taxpayers and drivers here in Michigan, we should look at a way to do that. Yeah. And there's no reason why we can't lower the taxes on gas, backfill it with some of the money that we have now. In fact, the governor has a $2.5 billion tax cut on her desk right now that would lower income taxes and provide a child tax credit for families. And so I hope she signs it, but she has till Monday.
All right. I want to thank both of you for joining me this morning to talk about all these things. Very important to your constituents and all Michiganders. Thanks again. And we're right back on Flashpoint.
DTE's natural gas is a lot more than just an energy source. It perks up your mornings and eases you into relaxed evenings. It works both hard and smart. It can help heal the body and transport the mind. And at the end of the day, cleaner, safe, affordable natural gas is there to do more than just dry your clothes. It's a warm hug waiting to happen. DTE.
At Independent Carpet One Floor & Home, we're proud to support the Big Three. For over a century now, the hardworking men and women of the Big Three have kept America moving. To show our appreciation, for a limited time, all Ford, GM, and Chrysler employees get an extra $100 off and we'll pay your sales tax. Hurry, offer ends soon. Independent Carpet One Floor & Home in Westland, supporting Michigan auto workers and proud to be your flooring retailer of choice.
Buckfire Law.
An injury to a child is devastating. As parents, you may not be sure what to do. At Buckfire Law, we win big cases for little kids. For over 50 years, we've won life-changing settlements for injured children and their families. You've been wronged. We'll make it right. Call us, 855-BUCKFIRE.
You know how to maintain your home, but
These are some very easy things you can do that many of you might not even know about, like cleaning a filter inside of your dishwasher.
wait, there's a filter in there?
A lot of people don't know about these either.
What is that?
Oh my!
Monday morning, Nick Monticelli has expert tips to save you time and money.
Small things turn into big expenses.
And even more importantly, keep your family safe. Monday on Local 4 News Today and streaming on Local 4 Plus.
Welcome back. We are all feeling the pinch of inflation right now. Prices rising from gasoline, paint at the pump, to clothing, groceries. Just about everything we buy has gone up a little bit because of this inflation. And now we're seeing the government try to combat that by raising interest rates. What does it all mean? Well, joining me to talk about that is Paula Gardner, the business editor at Bridge, Michigan. Daniil Manenkov is an economic forecaster at the University of Michigan. And David Bruhan is vice president and portfolio manager at Schwartz & Company Investment Advisors. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. And I feel like inflation is something really people haven't had to deal with for a while, maybe even a couple of decades. So I kind of want to start with how did we get here? And I think you're all qualified to answer this, and feel free to jump in. But let me start with you, Daniil. And is it too simplistic here to look at this as a result of this inflation, as a result of the government kind of flooding the market with all that money that came for people during COVID? Is that part of it?
I mean, it's definitely part of it, but to briefly summarize this, it's all due to the pandemic. And that includes the public health crisis itself, but also many of the policies that we implemented and a lot of the consequence of the pandemic. So, I mean, it's obvious that money that the federal government gave to people helped some to fuel inflation, but also a lot of people who did not get any help, so think people on the higher end of income distribution, basically couldn't spend a lot of their income for 2 years, and they saved a lot. And that sort of overhang of saving also makes people sort of tolerate inflation a little bit more than they normally would have. So, I mean, inflation is a complex phenomenon. There is a cost push, so things are getting expensive because supply chains are broken. There is an income effect because people have plenty of money, but there's also a social aspect. People were more accepting of price increases because, at least for a while, they understood that the situation is unprecedented, and they sort of were open to businesses that had to deal with COVID and survive COVID. They were open to seeing a little bit of price increases. But once prices get going, they can be hard to extinguish. I mean, inflation typically has its own momentum.
Yeah, it is complex for sure. Paula, let me ask you, we saw the Fed raise the interest rate this week, and I believe 5 to 6 more hikes are expected. What's your read on where it's headed, and are state lawmakers powerless in all of this, or do they have any recourse, do you think?
We will see more interest rate increases for the rest of the year. That's every projection that I've seen. And some people are saying that it might not even end this year, that it could keep going. I'm not sure exactly how high it will go, and Danielle may be the better person to ask on the forecast. It does seem that the state is, when it comes to elected officials, what kind of power do they have over inflation? They can watch. I think politically, everybody wants to help the average consumer spend less. But on a practical level, this is a global problem. We've got global inflation. There's a lot of volatility. Gas prices is one example. This is an international commodity, and no matter what we want the state or federal officials to do about it, it's going to do its own thing.
Yeah, I'll come back to you when I get to. Do you think suspending the gas tax could happen, or could help all that much? But David, I want to bring you in real quick. Is it possible to raise the interest rate without crashing the stock market? I know we've seen this in 2018. We tried to raise the rate, stocks took a dive, and then President Trump said, no, bring it back down to avoid that. What do you see happening here?
That's correct. What matters more than the change is the rate of change. And if the Federal Reserve, although it's a centralized body and they're looking backward, trying to guess, raises rates and telegraphs what they're going to do, and they do it in a logical, calm manner, it won't affect the stock market that bad. What you don't want to have happen is what occurred in the 1970s toward the end, when the Carter administration did wage and price controls and try to clamp down on it. As the capitalist system is wonderfully dynamic. And as long as you allow consumers and businesses to adjust to price increases, become more efficient, find better ways to do things, substitute goods and services, globalization has had a wonderful downward pressure on prices. Because as we used to say, in a global economy, you are only as profitable as your least sane competitor. So you can only raise prices until somebody overseas or in the United States figures out a better way to do things and lower prices. Unfortunately, you have a perfect storm, as Danielle mentioned, with respect to federal policy. In March of 2020, the Federal Reserve pledged $5 trillion to put into the system to save the economy. 2021, the Biden administration passed 2 big spending bills, $1.9 trillion each. Congress just passed another spending bill. So you're pushing $8-9 trillion in an economy that's about 22 trillion total. So Milton Friedman said it best: inflation is above all a monetary phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And when you push a lot of money into the system, commodities go up. So you've got federal policy, you've got supply chain shortages, and also you have almost a super cycle in commodities. If you remember back in 2020, gas was about $12 a barrel, or oil rather, and it's gone up to 125, and it's come back since. So there's a lot of dynamics, but we'll be fine as long as they telegraph this. It's already priced into much of the bond market, and we stay competitive.
You mentioned the 70s, and I think it's been a long time since things got really bad. And you think about Gen Xers and millennials, they don't remember that, but they do, are able to look at maybe their 401k or their investments and see that they've taken a dip recently. David, just real quick answer. Is it the advice there, as it always is, to not panic, stand pat when it comes to that sort of thing?
Well, for my investors, most of them are in retirement plans or long-term, 5 years or more. This is part of what stocks and bonds do. They go up and down. If you're saving for a car or a house and you've got money invested in 2 or 3 years that you're going to need, you may want to reevaluate that, because right now we've got headline risk with Russia. You really don't know what Vladimir Putin is going to do.
Right.
And until this subsides, there's a bit of headline risk that is going to impact your portfolio.
Yeah. Daniil, how long do you think this will last before we're able to deflate the economy a little bit, if you will?
Right. The hardest question. I think the range of projections is very wide. I think our center point expectation is that maybe it gets a little worse, maybe until early summer, before inflation starts to subside. But as I said, there are lots of risks right now. So COVID is not down globally. So there are waves in Asia and China, and maybe one starting in Europe. It may come here. It may introduce more disruptions into supply chains. Geopolitics can play a huge role. So the big unknown is what's going to happen, whether China basically joins the rest of the world in terms of enforcing sanctions on Russia or not. And if they don't, what kind of response will we see from the White House? So there may be more geopolitical risks to global supply chains down the road later in the year. But our center point projection is basically relies on what has happened already. So a spike in oil prices, but also the way the government measures rents. So a lot of that is already baked in. So we're hoping that inflation, year-over-year inflation, will peak by sometime this summer and then start subsiding by the end of the year.
That would be good, but like you said, a lot of X factors. Paul, we've heard the governor talk about possibly vetoing the suspending the state gas tax, a bill that was passed by the Republican-led legislature. What's your read on that? Do you feel like that's going to happen, or is she going to keep pushing for a federal gas tax suspension?
Depending on who you talk to, there's going to be a benefit or there won't be. This is just like one area where somebody has kind of, we've kind of latched onto this potential solution, but other people are suggesting other things. I think ultimately what we have to recognize is any kind of a gas tax holiday or whatever, however this ends up, it's not a lot of money. And we've got, on the other hand, we have a lot of people who cannot afford the gas, and something that gets a little bit more particular to who is affected and actually yields some sort of significant relief to them, I think will be the end solution, or at least the most desirable solution. But in the meantime, there are so many businesses who are looking at these prices and not being able to make a decision about how to operate over the coming months because they do not know what their costs are going to be for transportation, for products, for so many things, even employees' wages. So I think it's natural in Michigan to talk about what has been proposed and to look at what each party is doing. However, in a bigger picture, what we're talking about is fairly minimal, in my opinion, and from some of the people I talk to. Yeah, and it's certainly going. We'll see what the governor does in that regard. But obviously, so many factors at play here, and it's certainly a complex issue, and that's why we brought in the best. So I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning on Flashpoint to try and help people learn about it a little bit more, and then break it down and where we go from here. It's been really illuminating. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason. Have a good week.
You bet.
Thank you.
Take care.